And we're live talking all things Super Bowl props, the final live stream of the 2024 NFL season here on the RAS Picks YouTube channel. It's an impromptu live stream. So if you're joining live during the show, you're going to catch up right where we are. If you're joining live after the fact, I'm going to put in the timeline my three favorite props for the upcoming Super Bowl. They'll be timestamped so you can jump back to see it. Might be a chance of a bonus prop as well. I'm going to answer any questions about any of the prop markets. I'm going to talk about the game. I'm going to tell you everything that I think could happen during the Super Bowl following the three props as we get to some Q&A and wrap up the season in a very impromptu, easygoing, casual fashion here on the channel. Hope everybody's doing well, and I hope we see these numbers populate as it is just after 6 p.m. Eastern time, 3 p.m. Pacific time on Thursday afternoon. Everything's kind of settling down a little bit. I think there is going to be a bit of a late rush as we get to Sunday morning and into the game. But as for now, pretty smooth sailing and pretty easy going as we get to the final game of the NFL season. We're seeing Luke pop in. How are you doing? I'm doing fantastic. Hope you're doing well. Hope everybody else on the live stream is doing well too. Get your comments into the live chat as we go, and I'll do my best to answer all the questions as we're seeing the notification hit people's phones and this number of viewers start to go up, and will continue to do so as we go through the game. So if you watched the Monday live stream in the final podcast episode last week, there was a prop included in there. I'm not going to talk about that one. If you haven't seen that, you can jump over and get that one. I'm going to do totally different props here from what we talked about last week and give some perspective on what I think is going to happen and what I think is going to get down. So Kevin, David, Luke, and others watching the show, get the questions in the chat, and we'll answer them as we go. First one I want to bring up, Saquon Barkley over 12.5 receiving yards. You can also look at this as over 8.5 longest reception for Saquon Barkley, whichever direction you want to go for this. I'm sure there are plenty of alternates. You can look at this prop as well. This, to me, is a one play and done. It's going to happen at some point during the game. Don't know exactly when, but this, to me, is a pretty high level of confidence on this prop that we are going to see this come through and Barkley have the opportunity to execute on this. The big talking point about the Kansas City Chiefs defense has been Spags and the blitzes. A big talking point for the Eagles offense has been Jalen Hurts and his production against the blitz this year, which has been improved, but how much he struggles under pressure. Another big talking point has been the Eagles' offensive line. There's inevitably going to be situations throughout the course of the game where blitzes are brought by Spags, and it's going to be on Jalen Hurts to get the ball out of his hands quickly. Last week against Washington, we saw it happen. They brought pressure. Barkley was the outlet, and he cracked off a big play off of that. This is going to happen. It's just a matter of when in the game for the play where Kansas City overloads, brings extra guys. It's one guy too much, and you have Barkley off of a slip screen that gets the target in the flat and has an opportunity to break off a very big play. I have seen the Philadelphia Eagles in the playoffs utilize the screen game a lot more during the regular season. They only had 32 screen passes thrown so far in the playoffs this last 3 weeks. They've had 13 different screen pass attempts. It's becoming something they're utilizing a little bit more in higher leverage in key games. And I think it's going to happen in this game. And it's just about when this Sirianni time it up to catch Spags off guard, bringing that one extra guy. It's the flip over. It's the big completion and the big run for Barkley. I think he is going to have this big receiving play and exceed this number in one catch. And then you're also looking at the long rec at 8.5. I think both of these numbers are lower than they should be just because of how the season has gone for Barkley being so dominant on the ground and the Eagles really not utilizing these plays. But to me, here in the Super Bowl against the Kansas City Chiefs defense specifically, different animal, different element. I think Barkley has a big catch, a big run, and he goes over this or his long rec number if you want to look at that one. So prop number one of my three favorite is Saquon Barkley over 12.5 receiving yards. That's available at -112. Prop number two, Patrick Mahomes, 24 or more completions. This would obviously be the same as over 23.5. It's going to be a broader viewed show, so I'm kind of keeping the simplistic offering of these numbers that people are going to see at multiple sports books or pick'em sites, or if you have to be going the direction of an SGP, you're going to see that in there as well. So Patrick Mahomes, 24 completions or more. That would also be over 23.5. That is available at -132. at the moment. When I think about this specifically, it's more so what we've seen the Chiefs offense evolve into over the last couple of weeks, and that's much more pass happy than they were during the regular season. Pass rate over expectation is about 10% higher than what we saw them run at during the regular season. And I think that's really twofold. One, it's receivers coming back and being healthy for the Chiefs, but also two, it's the instability in the interior of the offensive line with Tooney kicked out to left tackle. You have Caliendo in at guard. It's just really hurting the run game. And the Chiefs offense has been evolving to create some of these short, quick passes in spite of not having the ground game, or in a way to make up for not having the ground game. And we're seeing a lot of quick and very easy passes being schemed up that are acting as effective run extensions. Last week against Buffalo, there were a lot of RPOs early. The purpose of those RPOs were to get Buffalo out of playing a lot of zone. The Bills switched to playing a lot of man, and then the Chiefs just had all these easy man-beating plays that they designed up with picks and rubs, and it allowed for a lot of easy completions. Philadelphia with Fangio plays, in theory, a lot of zone coverage, but there's a lot of man thrown in that skew a lot of the numbers. But I do think that we can see, with how great the Eagles' interior defensive line is, really give that trouble to the Chiefs again. And the Chiefs go to the quick passing game outside, out wide, a little bit more than expected, and they're going to do so earlier. Maybe not as much like we saw against Buffalo to get the Eagles into one type of coverage or another, but just to play away from that big strength that the Eagles have. Something else that stands out to me in this matchup is obviously Vic Fangio's defensive scheme has been very effective this season, but like the big calling card and the big theory behind the defense is to prevent the explosive play. If you think back to Washington's opening drive last week, a ton of plays on that drive, a ton of easy completions, easily Washington getting down the field. They get to the red zone and they stall out. But that leads to a lot of play volume. The Chiefs don't have a ton of drives, but they do have a lot of play volume on those drives, and they do gain a lot of yards during those drives. And so when we're thinking about a counting stat like completions, if the Chiefs move away from the run game because of the trouble up the middle, but you're having a defense that doesn't allow a lot of explosives and is going to allow the Kansas City Chiefs to have a lot of plays and accumulate a lot of plays, if there's an increased pass rate for that, I think a better chance of a lot of completions. And with the way that the Chiefs offense has been operating, could see a lot of those completions accumulate very quickly, especially if they approach the game like they did last week against Buffalo. So Patrick Mahomes, 24 or more completions over 23.5 for prop number 2. Prop number 3, Harrison Butker, 2 or more field goals made at minus 175. This would obviously be the same as over 1.5 field goals made. Some websites have kicking points at 7.5. That is not something that I would look at nor consider in the same manner as this prop specifically. And so this is a number that I still think is going to trend up and continue to push forward. We saw this morning it tick up a little bit. I think it's going to go even further. As I just talked about, the big theory behind the Fangio defense is to keep everything in front, not allow explosive plays, force teams to methodically work their way down the field, and then suffocate them in the red zone by not allowing space. And it's been something, no matter where he's gone, that has been very prevalent for the defense. Kansas City kind of matches up with that exceptionally well. When you think about Kansas City's willingness to get into those very third and short situations and how well they have executed them all season long, Kansas City has not had a lot of success, even with these receivers back, at finding the big explosive play. So I think Kansas City is really going to play into that. What we have seen Kansas City struggle with, aside from really the Bills game, is conversions inside the red zone. And so I think these offensive schemes and the defensive schemes really play hand in hand here. And we're going to see the Chiefs, like they always tend to do, have a lot of long, sustained drives. But I think the Eagles, better than most defenses they have faced at getting those stops inside the red zone. This is also Butker going indoors to kick, an unfamiliar environment for him, considering how much he plays outdoors. And so in a game like this, with these two clashes of offensive and defensive style, certainly I think there's going to be opportunity for Butker to have an extra field goal attempt or two than he typically does. And at this price at minus 175 for an indoor game with these offense versus defensive matchups, this to me is a price that is still too short at minus 175. So a recap of the three favorite. Saquon Barkley over 12.5 receiving yards. An alternate that you could look at if you so choose to would be over 8.5 for the longest reception. Number 2 is Patrick Mahomes, 24 or more completions, also over 23.5 at minus 132. And then Harrison Butker, 2 or more field goals made at minus 175. Now, what I want to say is if you're somebody on Sunday who is looking to put these together for a bit of a bigger payout, if you go to DK or FanDuel, you're getting about plus 390 on putting these three props together in an SGP. We now have a new sponsor here on the channel, which is Bet 105. If you're curious and you want to give Bet 105 a try and see what the sportsbook is about, this is a good opportunity to do so, because I have heard that tomorrow they will be posting these three props together at a 5-to-1 payout. So what you're typically getting at FanDuel or DraftKings for plus 390 will be available at 5-to-1 if you want to follow these. Bet 105 will not limit your account. They will not ban you. They will not kick you out. There is no rollover requirement for the free bets that you can see on site. If you want to use the link in the description down below, once this show is done, and head over to Bet 105 to do so, great opportunity to give them a try would be following this play, which will be posted tomorrow at 5-to-1 if you use the link in the description. So that's something I haven't really done before. New to the channel, new to me, but it is the Super Bowl. We're trying some things out. And I think instead of getting the plus 390, getting a 5-to-1 for those of you that want to go that direction, certainly worth trying out. And then, of course, if you're somebody who's betting frequently and betting a lot, the idea of being able to play at reduced juice where you don't get limited and you don't get shut off like Bet 105 will do, I think is a pretty appealing idea. Bonus prop that I want to get to before we touch on some comments and then get into a variety of markets. To me, this one is pretty intriguing. I've only seen it available at FanDuel. There's different ways that you can look at this. There's different ways that you can play it, but a bonus prop to consider: Mahomes and Hurts to combine for 500 or more passing yards. And the availability on this is at plus 135. So I just talked about how Mahomes, in my opinion, is going to be more likely to be passing the football at a higher rate in this matchup coming up on Sunday, which I think naturally leads to him having a good potential to exceed his numbers and put up a good passing yard number. If I go back to the initial preview, to me, the Eagles, although they might come out run heavy, obviously relying on Saquon Barkley, I do believe the Eagles are going to have opportunities throwing the football, maybe not to the extent like we saw Jalen Hurts a couple years ago in the Super Bowl in the first matchup, but whether it's the Chiefs electing to bracket coverage Brown and then put McDuffie on Smith, or maybe they switch that around, there's going to be opportunities for Smith. There's going to be opportunities for Goddard. I think the Eagles with Hurts throwing the football are certainly going to be able to make up their share of this combined passing yards prop number. And so I like this at 500 or more for the passing yards at plus 135. I do believe Mahomes has a big game throwing, and I think Hurts is certainly going to make up his share. It would put it at obviously 250 a guy, but I think both quarterbacks have the potential to threaten the 275 to 300 mark each. So 500 plus passing yards at plus 135 to me is a little bit short. I think Barkley, and the assumption of how much he is going to run, is getting a little bit too much credit in this one specifically. I do think, again, as we talked about with number one, there's potential for him to even contribute in the passing game more than expected too. So just as a bonus, limited availability on this, but Mahomes, Hurts, 500 passing yards or more. Get to some questions before I touch on some specific markets and give my thoughts for you guys to take away. Steven Nagler says, how great is it to be back in Saskatoon? No better place on earth. He's pumped about Saskatoon. So wife and I got the keys Thursday. We moved in. We got everything set. We had the appliances delivered Friday. And then we made the turnaround to come back to White Rock. The weather, luckily, we planned it well. If you've ever seen the show Highway Through Hell, that highway and that stretch called the Coquihalla is in between or on the highway from where we are now on the coast in White Rock to the Rocky Mountains in Alberta and Saskatchewan. we wanted no part of making my dad drive the U-Haul in late January, because you never know what you're getting with the brakes. You never go, none of those trucks are inspected. The moving quotes were insane because nobody wants to drive the highway. So we're like, we're not doing it at the end of January. We'll do it after the Super Bowl. The season's over, everything's settled. So we'll be driving back in a couple of weeks. But got the house, mountain of stress off of my shoulders with that process and what went into that. We're pretty pleased with how it turned out. Neither of us saw the house before we got into it as it was being built. And so to be able to walk through and have your first home and have it built the way you expected and exceed expectations was pretty special. So it was great to be back in Saskatoon for a few days. Full move is happening in a few weeks once football has finally settled down before we get to the start of the new league year in the middle of March. Bryce says, how do you reconcile the Chiefs' domination on high leverage plays and the coaching advantage as an Eagles backer? Eagles roster just good enough to overcome. I want to make it clear we have not bet nor released nor done anything with the side or the total. I saw some YouTube comments from the prediction on the last stream, which I tried to downplay about as much as I possibly could in terms of conviction and not betting it and not being involved. I think that got misconstrued a little bit in some of the comments that I came and saw through. That was simply a on the whim, we're doing content, here's the scoreline prediction that I think we're going to see. So we've not been involved in any way with the side nor the total for this game specifically. When it comes to the Chiefs' domination on high leverage plays and the coaching advantage, I think it simply comes down to continuity. I mean, the Chiefs have not only been here and done it, but they've been here and done it with the same coach and the same coordinator on the defensive side and the same play caller on offense and the same QB and largely the same key guys on both sides of the football. It's something that other teams just can't compete with and they don't have and they can't rely on like the Chiefs can. And not only is that true about the Chiefs, but we're talking about a coaching staff that goes to the next level. There was commentary today about how they have an unnamed defensive staff member that spends 3.5 hours per game only looking at what protections are doing in game and relaying that down, and protections on the O-line and relaying that down for specific play calls to Spags on the sideline. Like the things that you hear about the prep and the in-game adjustments and how this coaching staff is run on the sidelines is unlike what you're hearing from almost every other team in the league. And so the fact that they've been able to stay together and you have the best quarterback, it's a deadly combination that allows them to do the things that they do in these high leverage spots. And you have Mahomes, when trailing in second halves of playoff games, playing at a level that we've never seen another quarterback do, kind of cementing his greatness. And so it's a combination of a lot of things, but being able to have everything connected together for as long as the Chiefs have and hold that staff is incredibly impressive and just an asset that can't be overstated enough for the value. Doug and Sean are pumped for the prop show, as is Kevin. Hopefully a couple props here have lived up to the expectation for delivery. You guys know me. I'm not a massive prop player myself, but I wanted to put a couple together for those of you who are watching and sweating the game on Sunday, as we all will be. Luke says, would you play over 24.5 at -110 for Mahomes? I would play that, Luke, at 24.5 -110. Marty Lane says, guys, I'm about to move this line. Bet365 only is -115 over 1.5 Chiefs team total field goals. Butker over in 7 of 8 games versus Fangio with Mahomes 2. Love this pick. I hope you moved it. I don't know why that would be off as much as it is. Welcome to Super Bowl, and with so many props, you do find things like that. I don't know how much I'm buying into that like specific angle, but that is interesting when you consider Butker and the Chiefs offense against Fangio and the defense. And so I'm glad you agree with that one, Marty. I'm curious if it ended up moving along. Bryce is criticizing the line movement. You aren't moving the line. Anyone with a pulse is limited to Bet365. So if you're getting 1K down, they're welcoming your action. Yeah, they've always been kind of tough on that, for sure. Now, it is a Super Bowl prop that is very off market. So perhaps a bet of any decent size might be enough to alert when you're thinking about some of the more reputable books in the market, have that around minus 175 and 365 is at minus 115. That might be enough to flag it and move it on its own. Caesar says, awesome bonus show. Thanks for the hard work all season long. I appreciate you turning in. Moonfish, back for another live stream. Good to see you again. Second time today. Does the RAS credit offer for Bet 105 first deposit have an expiration date? Good question. If I didn't make that clear, for those of you who do sign up and play at Bet 105, if you deposit $250 or more, message us on raspicks.com. We'll credit your account on RAS Picks with $250, and you can use that towards any service that you want to. Moonfish, I'm not going to oversell you or anything and say that there's an expiration date that it ends tomorrow. There's not. We'll be good at honoring that, but I would encourage you as you're looking towards Sunday and the Super Bowl, great opportunity to give it a try, especially if you want to follow some of these props at 5-1. You can message over, and then you'll be all set up for March Madness and a lot. Ryan, the only reason I did not mention that is because it was mentioned on the first show. Don't want to undercut everybody who watched the first one. Recreational player, is Saskatoon better than Costa Rica? I've never been to Costa Rica, so I don't have a firm answer for that one specifically. I've spent a lot of time in Colombia, a lot of time in the Dominican Republic, some time in Trinidad and Tobago, living and working in the past few years, Bahamas as well. I can definitively say that no, from the month of December you kind of cut up for family, but from December through to, let's call it April, no, it is absolutely not better. But was born in Saskatoon, grew up in Saskatchewan. There is something to be said about living close to friends and family, something my wife and I haven't really done in our 10 years of marriage tomorrow, officially. And so being able to be close, I mean, just as I was there for a couple of days, you're 5 minutes away from someone you grew up with, and you for 30 years, I was, that going out and hanging out, and it's a 5 or 10 minute drive instead of a 3 or 4 hour flight. That's a big boost and a big benefit to overall life and happiness. And so we're looking forward to that. So in most ways, no, not better than Costa Rica, but in some ways, just in terms of stabilizing life and being close to friends and family you grew up with, I would say yes. Caesar says, heard Jalen Carter limited due to illness. He is key. Agree completely with him being key. I don't know what to make of the illness that's going through the locker room. It's obviously getting everyone almost anywhere. This time of year, he's now not done media availability for 2 days. It's probably a better sign that it's happening Wednesday, Thursday than it is Friday, Saturday into Sunday. We'll see. So he obviously key. If he's impacted in any way, that would be massive, a massive blow for the Eagles defensive line. Maybe it allows Milton Williams a little bit more of an opportunity, especially on Caliendo. We'll see how they handle that D-line and that rotation. But yes, Caesar, certainly something to watch. Sergio, would you bet total passing yards for the game over 436.5? Yes, I would. Absolutely. Brandon is asking, Bet 105 is an offshore, asking for a ... friend that lives in California. Yes, it is available to play anywhere in the world, is Bet 105. And so if you have some restrictions in your state and you're looking for a place that won't ban you, won't kick you out, will allow you to play, Bet 105 would be a great option for you, especially so if you live in California and you have the difficulties that come with some of those books. Tyler, Bryce, and Connor, appreciate you stopping by. I appreciate the comments in the chat as well. Want to talk about a few specific markets and just give my thoughts on what I was looking at, what was close, what was not, some thoughts on things to watch for, maybe give you some idea of things to come in the next couple of days if you're maybe on the fence or you're thinking about certain things. We'll start with the tackles. This would be tackles plus assists specifically. This is a market I really like. It's one that we talked about in the first episode with the Super Bowl preview back last week. It's unfortunately a market that isn't widely available a lot of places during the regular season, so you can't bet on it a ton. Just some thoughts here. Obviously, Bond is at the top. There was a YouTube comment that said Bond having the most tackles in the game was around plus 175. I still don't know where that came from, and I don't know where it is, but that would have been a nice alternative to consider. I think he's very involved in this, whether the Chiefs are going the quick pass game or to try to get the run game going a little bit. He's going to be involved a ton in the middle of the field. He's been very effective, tackles for losses. If you think about the Chiefs' interior of that O-line struggling, I think potential, it's a big game for Bond. Oren Burks is a very interesting name that's being kind of now available when you're looking at his price at 8.5. He was picked on a ton by Kansas City last year in the Super Bowl when he came in for Greenlaw after the injury. And so now Burks is going to be the guy in the middle of the field that you would think the Chiefs go after again. I think Kansas City absolutely has to attack the middle of the field. The Eagles have been very unsettled since the Dean injury. And so it's kind of a unique circumstance where for the second Super Bowl in a row, the Chiefs offense is going to be able to possibly pick on Burks. I don't know if it's necessarily a good thing for his tackle prop or not. You would be probably expecting him to make a lot of solos. If you think that it's going to be a big Kelsey game or maybe Noah Gray gets involved a little bit more, we'll see what comes of that. But he's a guy that's now popping up on all these tackles and assist lists as he is going to get a lot of time on the field and effectively a rematch for him against this Chiefs offense that picked on him a ton after that Greenlaw injury last year. And really, Burks was part of the reason why that 49ers defense couldn't get off the field. I know Bosa over pursued a couple times and Mahomes beat him with his legs, but that was a very positive matchup for the Chiefs after the injury last year. And now you're getting Burks thrust back into a lineup because of injury, albeit he's had a couple games to acclimate himself into this one. I didn't play anything with Bolton specifically. Last year, he was a guy that I had circled and did well with. He's at 8.5 and has actually been shaded towards the under. He's certainly going to have a lot of opportunities if the Eagles stick with Barkley, but I do think this goes a little bit more pass happy than not. A big question mark for me that I'm having a little bit of trouble figuring out is Chamari Connor in comparison with Leo Chenal. And so Chenal is at 2.5 and Connor is at 4.5. And Connor's been bet under a little bit. The big question and why the tackle market beyond, I think, Bond is a little bit tricky to navigate is the Eagles have been playing a lot of 3 wide receiver sets, especially down the stretch the last couple of weeks. And if that is the case, and we see Philadelphia be able to run it effectively early, I don't think the Chiefs can just leave Chenal on the field. But the question becomes, are they willing to take the chance with Connor at the nickel corner spot? The Eagles defense the Chiefs defense as a whole has improved significantly since Watson came back. It was a defense that improved significantly in terms of opposing QBR allowed. But during the course of the season when Watson was out, Connor was the guy that opposing offenses really picked on. And seeing him on the field and seeing him with some of these tackle numbers, if the Chiefs are willing to go with a lot more Chenal than they are willing to go with Connor, like that number could easily be far too high for Connor. Because I think if anybody's going to lose snaps in this game just from being a liability or being a bit of a problem, it's most likely to be Connor. But again, it's really going to depend on how the Eagles line up and what success they have running the football early, which makes it really hard. When I was looking at some of these last week as they were coming out, I was very willing and would have expected by this time this week, I would have had a bet on Leo Chenal over just because of how great he is at the line of scrimmage, how great he is at defending the run. He's the best run defending linebacker that the Chiefs have. And it's very likely that we see him used in a way where the Chiefs are running away from some of the issues in the Eagles part. I'm mixing them up a little bit as I'm thinking through this. The Eagles are going to be running away from potentially the weakness in the interior, potentially running away from Jones up front. And I think the Chiefs are really going to funnel some of these defensive looks to run into Leo Chenal, but they can't leave him on the field if the Eagles are sitting in a spread formation with 3 wide receivers, because that's going to set up easy pass looks for the Eagles. And so I have a lot of difficulty trying to figure out like who to attack here from the Chiefs tackle perspective, and that's making it very hard. A lot of the corners for Kansas City are very tempting to bet into, just because we're seeing how great they are at tacklers, how great they are at tackling against the run as well. They just get a lot of opportunities. You think a guy like Cook a couple weeks ago had a big game when the Chiefs were really struggling to defend the run. So there's a lot of opportunities for these corners, but it's very spread out. And so I wish this point spread was different than what it was. And I wish there was a little more clarity on what the Eagles would do from a formation standpoint. I don't have the answers for that, which makes it tough. And so it's a little bit unfortunate that it's not as easy to attack these. Bryce says, was it last year you gave out Nick Bolton? Yes, it was. So that worked out very well. So wish there was a little bit more ways to attack it. Brandon M is hanging on a live stream for 32 minutes, and he's complaining in the comments. Very easy way if you want to just close it out if you're not enjoying the content, Brandon. But I'm impressed that you have so much time to waste and then comment like that here on a live stream 31 minutes into the show. So thank you for spending time tuning into the show and watching. First downs, another market I typically really like for the Super Bowl. Problem that I have here, and part of the reason why I have not yet done anything with this one specifically, is trying to kind of figure out what are we getting from a game state perspective that I could be confident in. And I don't have a good answer for that. And I was hoping over the last few days there would be places somewhere that could create a compelling case for why a game state is going to be different than what we're seeing from a point spread perspective, which is just a lot of back and forth. Someone I really respect for props that I haven't really mentioned or referenced on the show this season, bet under 13.5 for the largest lead of the game pretty heavily. So I thought that kind of made it even more difficult to see a big lead one way or the other. Now, there was also the thought on another show that I was watching yesterday, which was Rob's show, and it was presented that the first downs under at 20.5 for the Chiefs was a good bet to make. And the logic made a lot of sense from the presenters, saying that the Eagles are going to really try run the football, control the ball, and keep Patrick Mahomes off the field. And so that kind of put a wrench in my thinking too. My first thought with this, as I started to see it at 20.5 for the Chiefs, was Vic Fangio and his defenses don't allow a lot of explosives. The Chiefs are not able to hit on a lot of explosives. A lot of near misses with Brown, a lot of near misses with Worthy. And because of that, the Chiefs are going to kind of effectively work their offense into this defense and have a lot of plays and a lot of opportunities to get a lot of first downs. But if, again, this turns into a game where the Eagles are controlling the clock, they're running it effectively with Barkley, this Chiefs run defense that looked really good at the early part of the year does not look like it's improved, and we see them struggle like they have the last 2 months against a much better O-line, against a much better run game than what they faced, that's going to cause a Chiefs team that doesn't operate very fast to begin with, that doesn't have a lot of drives per game to begin with, all of a sudden really need a lot of first downs out of those drives, and just a couple explosives could kill this. And so I really wanted to be on Chiefs first downs over, but there's been some pretty good evidence elsewhere and some pretty good bets made from people I respect that have me off of playing anything for the first down specifically. But if you think a little bit different from that, then there's some thoughts as to why. In terms of just playmakers, both sides, running backs, receivers, things that we want to get into. If you guys have any questions specifically, feel free to throw them in. What I have seen and heard from people that I respect the most when it comes to betting on props, Hurts rushing yards under, anything 38.5 or better has been pretty common among some of the bigger prop bettors that I look at and talk with. I've also seen Patrick Mahomes rush attempts under 6.5 be very popular. Both of those really just plays on the numbers, which are inflated for Mahomes. That's his biggest rush attempt number for a game that I have seen in the closing line database for props that I look at. So if betting him over on his rush attempts, you're going over a number that he's just never been priced at. And so that was part of the reason for why I've seen others bet his under. Another very popular show that's very influential for props had some of his yardage stuff over on a ladder. And so that's kind of a contradicting opinion. And that's been pretty common in terms of back and forth on some of these props so far. So those two QBs over have been popular. I've seen Smith-Schuster, his receiving yards get bet over by a couple other prop bettors that I really respect. The rationale that I can kind of justify for why that is the case is just because he's seeing an increased snap share as the Chiefs play with that third wide receiver on the field a lot more in recent weeks. Also have, as we talked about, Mahomes very likely to be throwing it short, throwing it more often, the increased pass rate over expectation, the decreased effectiveness of the run game. And then also, if you think these Eagles corners, very good 1 and 2, but potentially an opportunity for Smith-Schuster to find some space. And so he has been the guy that I have seen bet over for his yardage as well as 1.5 receptions. Another note that I would have, the worthy longest reception props have been bet under. I've seen that come in as well. Haven't seen much on either of the Chiefs running backs, a little bit on the Hunt total yardage under. That's just a fade of the Kansas City running game. And then Dallas Goedert, currently priced for his over-under for receiving yards. He is currently at, I'm pulling it up right now. I want to see if this has moved. He's at 52.5 at DK. When you look at some of the closing lines for Goddard specifically, his prop numbers, just in terms of recent receiving yard closes that we have seen, 37.5 against Washington, 36.5 against LA, 35.5 against Green Bay. Prior to the injury, 45.5 against Baltimore, 47.5 against the Rams, dating back to November. He is at 52.5 and trending higher. Certainly a positive matchup for the Eagles, throwing over the middle against tight ends, where Kansas City has really struggled. So his prop price has been quite high. There's been some under money coming in as of earlier today, and that might be something that continues leading up to kickoff, as his prop price, similar to Mahomes, is higher than we have ever seen it, specifically for some of those numbers. So there are some thoughts there specifically. Bryce is asking about A.J. Brown over 70.5. Depends on the blitz rate for KC. If Kansas City really dials up the blitz and really gets aggressive with it, A.J. Brown has been the main option for Jalen Hurts to target against the blitz. And you would think if they go with more of a double coverage look rather than just leaving McDuffie on him, which is exactly what Bill Barnwell thinks is going to happen, as well as some other film guys that I've been looking at. Ted Wynn was a little indifferent on it, but he did expect the Chiefs to potentially go bracket more than one-on-one. That could change things a little bit for A.J. Brown and how effective he could be, especially against the blitz. And so much like a handful of other things in this, there's just a couple specific matchups, a couple specific schemes, which could change things here quite a bit. Jason, thoughts on Barkley under 27.5 first quarter rushing yards? This is another one. I've not seen a running back ever priced this high, especially in a first quarter market. It just never happens. And I mean, you see some guys that are elite in like 12.5, 13.5 range. I remember some James Conner games where you're getting him at like 9.5 for a Cardinals team that loved to run the football early from heavier personnel. So you get to 27.5. I mean, it's a crazy number. Nobody breaks some of these big runs better than Saquon Barkley, but you have a Chiefs team that seldom, if ever, concedes big rush attempts. Also, something I would say kind of comes top of mind when we're thinking about Barkley first quarter. At times this season, and this is kind of anecdotally and just subjective from my opinion, I feel like the Eagles have gone a little bit more pass heavy early in the games and then they've settled into their offense later. I think some of the reason we've seen them fall behind early in games, they were one of the worst first quarter ATS teams in the league, if not the worst, was because it just was a feel that I have. I don't have any numbers supporting this, but they just went pass heavy early. And so that would be potentially another positive here to this first quarter under if you're looking at Barkley specifically. Caesar, any thoughts on Hopkins over 11.5 rec yards? I understand the low number because of the recent non-use of D-Hop, but man, that is tempting. Mahomes getting the vet a Super Bowl touchdown is also a tempting bet. Hitman, who you guys know, friend of mine and a very, very successful professional prop bettor. I saw him do the cover show. I've seen him do a few others. I don't know if it's necessarily his favorite, but it's certainly up there in one of the first he talked about. He loves, and then I'm maybe using the wrong adjective, but I look at what he did, putting it out that early. I would suggest it's, or infer it would be very strong. He's on the under for Hopkins everywhere. So that would, I wouldn't want to play the over to go against him on the other side because of that when it comes to a prop. I don't want to be on that side of things. So Caesar would not be playing that Hopkins over because of that specifically. Any other questions before we wrap up? Let me know in the chat. Again, guys, in the description of the podcast and the YouTube video here, there's a link to Bet105. There's also a link to Odds Logic as well. Two sponsors here on the channel. I love the Odds Logic product. I haven't talked about it so far in the show. I love using it on Mac. I love using it. The mobile version, you heard me talk about during release shows if you're tuning in, is awesome. It's the fastest live odds that you get from any product. It's 1/5 of the price of competitors. You can use it on mobile, which no other product has. And they have every book that matters. And every book is not referencing just the regulated apps in the US, but all of the key offshores, all of the key books that you need to look at in terms of understanding where the important bets are coming in. They have everything in real time, desktop, mobile, Mac friendly, everything. I've used it all season. I've loved it. Rick and the team created Don Best. Now they've created Odds Logic. If you want to use the link, there is a free 7-day trial for you to use in the description of this YouTube video. You can just see if it's for you, see if it works, see if it's something that you like. I highly recommend it. You just have to use either the link in the description or the referral code RAS. I've yet to hear a piece of negative feedback from it, from anybody that's signed up or anybody that's used it. And it's very rare in the betting space, as you guys know. Even look at the live chat. Everyone hates everything, and everyone hates everyone in the betting space. And then you have this product that's relatively new, but people use it and just love it compared to all the alternatives. Recreational player, it's $99 a month. So other odds screens for the same speed, for the same books, for the same injury alerts, for the same feeds will charge 5 to 6 times that. You're getting it free for a week to try it out, and then it's $99 a month after that. And so I would highly recommend checking that out in addition to Bet105 if you're looking for a book to follow. And I expect tomorrow these 3 favorite props that I mentioned will be up on the site at 5-1. That's what I was told in the text message. We'll see how that comes through, but you can check that out through the link below. Okay, that will do it for me here on the prop betting live stream. 3 props. I'll recap them again. Barkley over 12.5 rec yards. Mahomes 24 or more completions. Butker 2 or more field goals made. And then the bonus for the QBs to combine it. Appreciate everybody for stopping by. Appreciate everybody for listening and tuning in all season long. Hope you guys enjoyed the live stream. Enjoy the game on Sunday, everybody. Have a fantastic Super Bowl weekend. Enjoy the game. Enjoy the time with family, friends. Enjoy the food. Enjoy the festivities. Have an awesome week. We will chat to you again in a few weeks' time regarding NFL and some of the new content direction that will be created by us here the next couple of weeks with some exciting things ahead. Thanks again, everybody. We'll chat to you all soon.